The Story and the Song. Once upon a time, there was a little girl who had a story and a song. And she would sing the song to herself when she was out playing in the flowers, and she would tell the story to her dolls when she would play with them at home, and she would dream about the story when she was asleep, and there would always be a smile on her face. Now, whenever she was doing housework, she would sing the song to herself as well, but pretty soon her parents started getting tired of the song and the story, and they told her, "Child, please, I need to concentrate," said her father. "Can't you see I'm reading the newspaper? It's very important. Please, let me concentrate." And whenever she would try to tell her mother the story, her mother would say, "Not now, not now. I have other things to do," and she would keep on talking with her friends. And pretty soon the girl learned to not share her story or to sing her song when there were other people around. But it was all right. She would still tell her story to her dolls, and she would still sing her song when she was out playing in the field. But then she went to school, and at school her friends would laugh at her story. "That's stupid," they would say, and they would laugh at her song. "You sing terribly," they say. And little by little, the little girl stopped singing and stopped telling her story until she stopped entirely. Well, the little girl grew up, and the story and the song were buried deep inside her heart. She would still dream about them sometimes, but this time when she dreamed about them, she wouldn't smile. Instead, a tear would roll out of her eye and down her cheek, because she missed them, you know. She missed them a lot. And what she didn't know was that they missed her too. She grew up into a fine young woman and eventually married a good, honest, and hard-working man, and they were very happy together. But the man could tell that there was something missing. You see, he loved his wife, but he felt that she was hiding something from him. There was something that she wasn't quite telling him. There was a part of her that he couldn't access. And sometimes he would stare into her eyes and he would see that there was something hidden behind them, and he wondered what it was. And it felt as if she weren't always fully there. Well, time went past. The girl, who was now a woman, quite often wanted to share her story and her song with her husband because she loved him so much. And sometimes she would think that maybe he would like them, maybe he wouldn't laugh. But then she would remember about all the people who had told him that it was stupid and that she sang badly, and no, because she didn't want him to laugh at them. She thought maybe if he knew, he wouldn't like me. But finally, the day came when the story and the song were sick of it. Sick of it. Sick, I tell you. They had been locked up inside in the dark for so long, and they needed to be outside. They wanted to stretch. They wanted to fly around and to see the world like they'd used to. They had tried to get the girl to tell them and to sing them so many times, reminding her in dreams, but she still ignored it. And finally, they were fed up. And that night, as the woman slept, the story and the song, who, as the time and the years went by, had gotten more and more resentful and grumpy, finally had enough and said, "That's it. Next chance we get, we're jumping out." And that night, the woman started dreaming once again of the story and the song, and it was a strange dream, a hard dream, because they were angry at her, and as she slept with her mouth open, and she sighed, and just as she opened her mouth, poof! The story and the song jumped right out of her mouth and hid under the bed. Well, they waited there. The woman woke up in the morning, early as she always did, and went to prepare breakfast. And she left the door of the bedroom open. And the story and the song, who were peeking out from under the bed, saw the door was open and hopped right out as quickly as they could. And while the woman was preparing the breakfast for her husband in the kitchen, they hopped right over to the door. Well, they hid. They were waiting for the moment. but they didn't get a chance. Because the man came by, and he put on his coat, and he put on his boots, and he almost caught them. And he opened the door, and he left, and he closed the door so quickly that they didn't get a chance to go out. And so, they didn't want to run the risk of getting caught and being locked back inside the woman's heart. And so, quickly, they turned themselves into something that the woman wouldn't recognize. The song turned into a long man's cape, relatively similar to the one that her husband had worn. And the story turned into a sturdy pair of man's boots. And they placed themselves right there by the door, waiting for the man to come back, waiting for the door to be open so they could sneak outside. When the man returned, however, and he opened the door, he saw a man's jacket hanging there on the peg, and it wasn't his. And he saw a pair of man's boots sitting there by the side of the door, and they weren't his either. "Hello?" he said. "Darling, are you home?" "Why, yes," she said. "I was just starting to make dinner. You're just in time. Come on in, sit down." "Do we have visitors?" he asked. No, it's just me." "Well, then, who's been here?" "Nobody," said the woman. "I've been here all by myself all day. I haven't left the house. I haven't even opened the door at all." But there was a man here." "No, a man? Don't be silly. What are you talking about?" "Yes, there was. Come, look, there was his coat hanging there, and the boots. Come, you don't believe me? Come, let me show you." And he took the lady back to show her, but he had left the door open. And while he had left the door open, the coat, the song, had flapped its arms and flown away, and the boots, the story, had hopped right out the door and gone to wander the world. And when the man came and saw that the coat and the boots were gone, he said, "There was a man here. There was a man here, and now he's left. Why are you lying to me? Why are you lying to me?" "I'm not lying to you," said the woman. "What are you talking about?" "You are. You're cheating on me. I knew you had a secret. I knew you were keeping something from me. There's always been something that I don't understand. There's always something that you've been holding back and keeping from me. I knew it. I knew it." And it turned into a huge fight. The woman started crying and saying, "Why don't you believe me?" And he said, "You're cheating on me. I knew you were hiding something from me. You're keeping secrets." And they fought so bitterly that finally the man, who hadn't even taken off his coat or his boots, stormed right out the door and left. The woman went to her room, threw herself on the bed, and cried herself to sleep. She waited and waited for him to come back that night. But he didn't. He was so angry and so hurt that he couldn't bear the thought of going back and spending the night with her. And he didn't know where to go. He wandered the town, but it was late and it was dark and he was tired. And finally he went to the Temple of Lights. The Temple of Lights was a place where all people with broken hearts could sometimes find refuge. And he curled up in a little corner. And he did something he hardly ever did. He cried. There was no one there, just all the little flames of all the candles that had been turned out in all the houses in the village. That was where the flames went, to the Temple of Lights at night after people blew them out. And he wrapped himself up in his coat and he wept and wept until finally he had no more tears to cry. The woman woke up in the middle of the night. She had left the candle burning for there to be a light on for him to come back. But she saw that he wasn't coming back, at least not that night. And so she got up, she closed the door, she went back to bed. She blew out the candle. But she didn't sleep that night. Now the man wasn't sleeping either. He was just wrapped up in his coat, thinking of all these terrible things, when suddenly the little flame from his house, poof, popped up in the Temple of Lights. Now all the flames thought that he was asleep, and they gathered around. Where have you been? Why did it take you so long to come tonight? How come that the light is... What happened? Oh, and the man is here. The man... Shh, don't wake him up. No. He cried himself to sleep. He can't hear anything that we're saying. Tell us the gossip. Juicy gossip. We know something happened because that man has been crying all night, and you've never been so late coming here. Oh, gather in, said the flame from the man's house. You're never going to believe the story that I have to tell you. Well, it just so happens that the woman had a story and a song, and she never told anybody, and then they were mad at her, and they hopped out, and they became, and she told them the whole story, and the coat and the boots, and then when the man came, he thought coat and boots, and he thought man, and she thought that, I thought she was cheating, ha, and they had no idea, and now there's a big fight, ha. And then they flew out, went out the door, ha, and the man is crying there, ha, and he has no idea. But when the man heard all this, because he'd been listening to all of this, he jumped up and said, "Thank you!" and tried to hug the flames, but then, ow, they burned. And so, okay, bye. And he raced out of the Temple of Lights, raced back home, burst open the door, ran to the bedroom, and hugged his wife as tightly as possible and said, "Oh, I know everything now. I know everything. Oh, my darling. I've always wanted to know you. I've always known that there was something you were hiding from me, but I want you to share it with me. Oh, please, I want to hear your story. I want you to sing me your song." But the woman looked at him. What story? What song? It was too late. They were gone.